Hello, my name is Katie Sandow and welcome to the Marketing Forum podcast, where I have conversations with lots of people on everything from life, work, careers, and of course, marketing, comms and creative. In this episode, I catch up with Jaye Cowle, who is an absolute delight. Jaye runs her own marketing agency, specialising in Google Adwords, called Launch Online, based around about Exeter, but I believe she has clients all over the shop. Jaye has an insane amount of marketing knowledge, and she knows so much about business and what really makes marketing work in business. Luckily, I agree with her on pretty much all fronts, or it would have been for an awkward conversation. But so much to learn, whether or not you are a young person in marketing looking to develop, or whether or not you are a business leader who still isn't quite sure how to make marketing work for you. Lots to learn from this conversation, and I really hope you enjoy it.
Tell us about, to start, so you've got Launch Online right behind you. For anybody who doesn't know about Launch Online, tell us what it does.
So the elevator pitch is that we're a Google Premier partner and we manage people's online advertising to get them better results. So Google ads, Facebook ads, anything to do with online ads. And we predominantly work with SMEs and we just make their advertising spend work harder.
Cool. So I actually don't know what you were doing before you started, because you were a consultant originally, weren't you, on Google? But what were you doing before that? How did you get the bug for Google advertising?
So, I mean, right at the beginning of my career, I worked on The Big Breakfast with Johnny Vaughan and Denise Van Outen.
Get out.
Yeah, no, seriously. And then randomly, I worked on Art Attack with Neil Buchanan doing the large pictures. So that obviously massively set me up for a career in Google Ads.
What were you doing with those guys?
Running, location management, a real mix of things. I did politics at Bristol University, so it was really easy to just transition straight into TV. I mean, it's definitely not a path that was set out and clear, like being a lawyer. But I really enjoyed the kind of buzz of TV. And my final job in TV was working for Thomas Cook TV, which was a disaster for my television career because it was cable TV and not the BBC and not ITV. And not Channel 4. And I really wanted to get into political television, like on the records. But that wasn't to be. And Thomas Cook TV finished off my career in television. And so I moved into marketing. And I became the head of sales and marketing for a travel company. So that kind of made sense, going from TV travel to TV marketing. And I really, really enjoyed working in travel. It was a very sociable, very, very sociable set of people. We go to conferences, conferences were like on cruise ships. It was very enjoyable, but it wasn't very well paid. So when I got pregnant with my first child, paying in Southwest London, paying for childcare and paying for, paying to go to work, I was making no money. So I had to change my career because you can't work in travel and live in Southwest London. That really prompted me to kind of look elsewhere. And there were two things that happened. One, I almost bought the cheese shop in Truro.
No way.
Like all sensible people, I Googled businesses for sale in Cornwall, and my mum and dad were down in Cornwall, and my husband's mum was down in Cornwall. And we thought, let's go take the kids. I had two kids very close together. Let's take the kids. Let's go and live the life down in Cornwall, and we'll run a cheese shop because that makes sense. Our first promotion was going to be buy one get one brie.
Oh my goodness. You've missed a trick here.
I know. Tom said I can on bear it. So we had to
Oh man, do you know what's funny? I nearly bought a cheese shop as well.
No
Not
way.
the same one. But I don't know what it is about us marketers, but it just feels like an all natural purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you love cheese and you love marketing, it's like the perfect recipe.
There's so many puns.
It didn't happen, and we decided not to go forward with the cheese shop. And Tom went to go and work for Rona at Excess Energy, and I tried to decide what I'd be doing, with my life. And one of the things that I realised, although I've been working in the travel industry, and Cornwall's great for travel marketing, what I'd been doing at this travel company was running a marketing agency, basically. So I was, we wanted to spend about £1 million on marketing for travel. So they sold luxury Caribbean holidays, but we didn't have £1 million because the margins in travel are really tiny. So what I'd do is I'd come up with a marketing plan and I'd cross-sell it to the hotels, the airlines, British Airways, Virgin, the tourist boards, and I'd get them to pay for our marketing. And in return, they were getting access to our database of clients, our travel agents, our contacts. And it was brilliant because they didn't have to set up big events themselves. They would just come and buy a table at one of our events. So it was a win-win on both. So one year I actually even made a profit for them. So they had a negative marketing cost.
Oh man.
And that totally has set me up for running an agency. But it wasn't, when we decided not to buy the cheese shop, it wasn't like a natural step to then go, okay, I'm going to set up a marketing agency. I first of all got fired from my first job because I realized I was too opinionated to be employed anymore. And I, having 2 kids meant that I was very time poor, and I therefore had very low tolerance. And was very tired, and I couldn't cope with the fact that the place I was working wasn't retaining customers well enough. They weren't taking customer service seriously enough. So the cost per acquisition, the cost to get a new customer was too high. So whatever marketing plan that I came up with was never going to be able to drive enough new customers because everybody just complained all the time when they came to visit. That was really tricky because when you've had kids and you've been on maternity leave and also you've left the place that I left London, I left my career, I really suffered from confidence issues, which, by the way, anyone that knows me would be surprised. But I thought, oh God, maybe I don't talk the language of marketing anymore. Maybe no one understands, what I'm saying anymore. Maybe I'm not relevant. I mean, I'd only had a little bit of time out of work, but maybe I'd lost my skills. And that was quite frightening. There's no question. The first person I called, it wasn't even Tom. The first person I called when I got asked to leave the premises and I got fired, the first person I called was my old boss in London, because I was like, I was good, wasn't I? I mean, I was really good, right? I need you to tell me that, because right now I've just had someone tell me, could you pack your things and go immediately and don't come back? And so that was a real life lesson that also there's, you have to be your true self. And I wasn't my true self with them. I stayed there too long. And instead of fronting up to it and saying, do you know what, I'm not the right person for the job, I probably became a complete pain in the arse. And I don't, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. But it was also one of the worst.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because I think so often that happens where what really needs to happen is you need to turn around and tell them that they're crap. And instead what ends up is that, you get that given to you. But it's so common. One of the reasons I wanted to start doing the marketing forum in the first instance was, I don't have children and I'm not having children. However, I know a lot of people who have had children and the confidence of stepping back into the job market if they've been away. It's just like you say, it's, do you even speak the language anymore? How are you going to get clients? Like that kind of conversation, it's so common. And, it's just kind of saying, actually, yeah, you do. You were great and you are great. And, it's providing evidence. If you're listening to other people talk in those ways, it reassures you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it does. And, I think that marketing has gone through a funny couple of decades where people were talking about marketing and digital marketing, and you'd have a marketing manager, a digital marketing manager, a social media manager, an SEO manager, and marketing became this really siloed department, already siloed from sales normally, which I don't agree with. I think, there's this great saying, I think it was David Packard that said it as in HP, Hewlett Packard, it's marketing is too important to be left up to the marketing department. I think that's a really good point. If the managing director is not getting involved, if the sales director isn't getting involved, the buck kind of ends up stopping with marketing. Well, the sales department complains that the leads aren't coming through from marketing, and marketing. Anyone who's taken a break for children for whatever reason feels like they're coming back and everyone's talking a different language, but it's still a customer. It's still marketing, and we shouldn't be siloing everything off. And this kind of, people say, "Oh, I don't understand digital marketing." It is all just marketing. It's just different channels.
It used to wind me up when you see job adverts for digital marketing manager, and you just think, like, so if you're not recruiting for digital marketing manager, does that mean they're not touching a computer? And you just think, like, are they on the print? Are they? And I get it. Like, what they mean is they want somebody that knows how to do a lot of that stuff in-house. But the way, like you say, the way it comes across is that there's a fence up, and
yes. And it's my favorite thing is job advert, digital marketing manager who understands PPC, SEO, WordPress, can write copy, can write press releases, can do the e-newsletters, and they're going to be paid £22,000.
I know. There's whole other conversations. There's a whole other conversation on marketing and sales. How do you structure that? And also, do you put them together? Do you not? And then there's a whole other conversation around helping people understand how to recruit marketing.
Yeah.
Because just, like you say, trying to get people that can do everything and then paying them pittance.
But also, so paying them pittance, right, which means you're going to probably get a younger person who is early on in their career, who at that point really needs to learn off a senior person, needs to learn off an experienced person, because you don't learn marketing on a marketing course. You might understand some of the principles from it. You learn it by understanding the business that you're working for, understanding that customer, and delivering the right message at the right time to the right segment. These poor people who are put into digital marketing exec or marketing manager jobs at 23, they've never done it for another company, and then they're expected to drive forward the growth of this company, and then if they don't manage to do that, if they don't manage to hit whatever target, the managing director goes, "Oh, well, they weren't any good."
Well, and also
they're not enabled.
Exactly. And this is why marketing, I think, you hear people, marketing's not commercial. Well, what 22-year-old that's never worked in business is commercial?
Yeah.
Of course they're not, because they've got no one to learn from. You're disengaged from marketing. And I think this is what creates the whole sense of the fact that marketing is expensive, it doesn't work, it's not commercial. That's because you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, but again, whole other conversation, isn't it, around, how you, because again, this is why I wanted to start the marketing forum, because I know you don't learn from a course or qualification. You learn from being around other people and them having the experience of the business or the market or what works and what doesn't.
Definitely. And I get frustrated that businesses just think, oh, well, we could get away with paying, 18, 22 grand for a marketing exec. And there we go. We've ticked the box. Now we've sorted marketing. And that is just not how it works. You know, I'm doing a webinar later today, and it's about going back to basics and understanding the 4Ps or the 7Ps, depending which school of thought you come from. But, you know, if you aren't speaking to the sales team about the sales function, if you aren't talking to, the product team, the product development team about whether this is the right product at the right time, marketing is then destined to fail, because all of those things have to work in harmony. And especially with Google, because you can just visibly see in one place whether you're the wrong price, or whether your reviews are rubbish, or your product's now obsolete.
It's fun. I wonder how many of us go into businesses told that the marketing has got an issue. And this has happened to me many times now. And then actually you go in and you go, I'm really sorry, it's not your marketing, it's what you're doing. It's crap, or it's totally wrong, or, you know.
Definitely. And that is what does take confidence. And in fact, right at the beginning, you said, you know, how did I end up becoming a Google Ads specialist? Well, this, you know, when I went and was forcibly left that job, I realized that actually I could work for multiple clients as a consultant. And it was actually Nigel Carpenter from St. Michael's Hotel who said to me, you know, I'd really like you to be on the team, but I'd like you to be a consultant. I'd like you to have many clients, and I'd like to be one of those clients. And that's what took me into consultancy, which allowed me to have experience of different businesses very quickly to see what the commonality is between them and how they could succeed. And the biggest gap I could see was that they were wasting money on Google Ads, and they weren't understanding how to measure the impact that Google Ads was having. And so I retrained and I made that my specialism. That also meant that in the shortest period of time, I could have the biggest impact on a business. Because as a consultant, if you're only there 1 day a week, or, you know, 5 hours a week, what can you really change? You know, you don't want to be creating the cocktail menu. You know, you want to be doing proper strategy, but a business will probably only let you have the time, especially in Cornwall, to work on strategy if you can show return on investment. And that was the quickest way I could get return on investment for these companies that wanted proof. And I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed two aspects of it. I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed how measurable it was. I enjoyed sort of how formulaic it was, but how you could be creative within that formula, within that recipe for the perfect Google Ads campaign. You could still show creativity, and you could be obviously better than the competition. You know, you'd see other ads that weren't as inspiring or were showing up for the wrong searches, and you could very quickly be better than the competition for your clients. And then it meant that I was getting to work with industries that my previous travel background wouldn't have let me go and work for naturally. So I was able, you know, I had a care home client, I had a organic skincare client. I even had a legal client at one point, but that didn't last very long, because if you've seen the cost per clicks, geez Louise, that was really hard to prove a return on investment, no question. But yeah, it gave me access to work across many industries and make a difference. And then on the other side, what I really enjoyed was, you know, the Google swag, going to events, feeling like I was part of something bigger, because I did feel quite cut off in Cornwall. And I felt like I was something big. I was part of something bigger, and that I was part of something that if you say you're a Google guru, everyone goes, oh, wow. You know, it gave me a bit of kudos, and meant that I could leave the county and go and you know, drink, I don't know, you know, punk IPA with geeks up in London.
And you felt validated by that.
I'm so easily pleased. I mean, I got a pen and I got a notepad with Google on. I mean, life doesn't get much better, right?
It's so good. Like, the way Google have structured that themselves is so clever, isn't it? Like, the way that they have created that buy-in.
Definitely, but it's only there because they hold the market share for search, and it will be interesting what happens over the next few years, because I see what Microsoft are doing. I see how Facebook and Instagram and how they're adopting search within their practices. I see what the brands are, where they're wanting to spend their money, and marketeers love marketeers love to kind of be able to see what they're doing. So a Facebook ad, which is much more visual, and they can picture where that placement is. With Google ads, they're text ads in search anyway. It's very dry. And they're just not as engaged. So I think part of it is being driven by the fact that a marketeer loves, the visual element.
Well, I mean, so does the audience, doesn't it? Like, especially with visual brands, not lawyers maybe, but anybody that's got beautiful content and creative, of course they want it to be seen. But also that's partly, I guess, what's influencing buying decisions.
Yes.
So, I mean, obviously, I feel like it's a stupid question to talk about how much Google stuff has evolved and continues to evolve. And I guess you've answered it in a way, but how do you keep on top of the advancements? It's constant, isn't it?
Oh my God. I mean, I haven't given up, but that's why I started employing people, because it is really hard. It's if you want to be the best, which that is, we won European PPC Agency of the Year a couple of weeks ago. And if you do want to be considered the best, you have to be on top of all of the changes. It's not only the changes that are in the interface, it's the changes that are in beta that are coming to the interface, or that, have just recently been launched, but you only got access to on like 2 accounts. I mean, it's relentless. So launch, we have 20% of everybody's time is on development, on professional development, on learning. And we have weekly calls with Google for them to tell us what's happening in the interface, what's about to come, which clients might be affected. Like I said, we get access to these betas of things that are changing. Not all the betas actually come to fruition. Not all of them end up in the wild. But it's constant reading of blogs. It's constant watching of webinars. It's calling up other agencies. And it's got to the point now where my mantra is always employ people that are better than you.
Yeah.
And I've now got a team. I think there's about to be 12 of us. There's 10 at the moment, and they're awesome. And it's their job to stay ahead of the game. They also, because we work across different industries, they also have to stay up to date with what's happening in the industry, what competitors are there. It definitely keeps them on their toes, I can tell you that.
But it's great though that you've built that time in, because there's plenty of companies that don't build in that time. And I know you're in a particular field where that stuff is critical, but equally, it's a valuable lesson for businesses to think, employ better than you, but also give them time to stay better.
Well, the thing is it is how you get ahead of your client's competition. So yes, from an agency perspective, we want to get ahead of other agencies. But from our client's perspective, they want to be able to beat their competition.
Yeah.
And you can do that by being creative within the interface, by trying different bid strategies, for seeing little kind of hacks that you've seen work for one industry that might work for another. It's why you employ an agency as well, because your in-house person, if you have an in-house person, you've got this situation where they're very blinkered into your own industry, the office politics, the hurdles that they give up trying to overcome. An agency is always going to be able to bring that experience of other industries, of what they see working in other accounts. And also they're going to question everything, because they don't have those same barriers. If they're going to question, have you seen that actually so-and-so selling your product for £3 less? Nobody's going to buy your product, whereas in-house people don't always have the confidence or the chain of command to be able to do that, and I did always feel also the more you pay, the more you listen to the advice. That was an interesting one.
But I also think, for me, the digital side, it makes so much sense to outsource that, just because, you know, you said you give your team 20% of the time, and they're already, you know, I know some of your team, they are brilliant, and they are coming from places like Google. How can an in-house person, they cannot be as good as that. They can't possibly compete, if you like. So of course it makes sense to outsource that very specialist expertise.
Yeah, because also when you outsource it, that, like, for example, you know, Danny, who you mentioned, has come from Google. You know, Danny is able to sit with Josh and Elliot and debate the pros and cons of going for max clicks or max conversion strategy, what the client's needs are, what they've seen working in another account. I mean, you're never going to get that with an in-house team, unless you're like AO.com. And you do get to a size where in-housing does make sense. But what almost all of those in-house teams have at big brands is an external consultant that comes in for training, for, you know, for strategy meetings, for making sure that the skills are kept up to date. The other thing is if you've got an in-house person that is responsible for PPC and SEO and email marketing, it's always PPC that they ignore, because every time you log in, the bloody interface is changed again. You know, every time you log in, you think, oh God, what does this mean? And it's also not as gratifying as writing a blog, or I suppose it depends on your personality, but I find that it's the PPC that gets ignored.
Because you're like, I set it up, I'll just let it run. Have you checked it? No.
Definitely. And with Google expanding broad match and removing 100% visibility on search terms, and oh my God, writing your ad copy for you, and in-houses and also PPC consultants that aren't very experienced, or, you know, or don't keep up their learning, don't go into the account often enough to see this stuff. So it can be a minefield, no question.
I really want to talk to you about digital strategy. So how do you think businesses and, you know, even marketers should approach digital strategy, sort of like from the beginning?
Well, I definitely, first of all, think that they should be doing it again now, because I think this year has thrown any digital strategies that were written predating March. It's blown them out the water. People have got new customers now. They've got different channels. They've got, you know, probably different products. So whatever happens, they should be reevaluating their digital strategy. What's our approach? I mean, when I'm always coming at it from a paid advertising perspective. So the questions that I always want to ask a marketing director is, you know, what are your margins? What are your best selling products? And who is your customer? To understand kind of how, rather than starting with budget, because anytime you ask, so what's your budget? Very rarely will you ever get a straight answer from that question, because the person at the other end of the phone is so worried that if they tell you the budget, you're just going to bring up your fee and your cost to match that budget. So we don't tend to come at it from a budget point of view. Instead, we come at it like, how much do you want to sell? What is the margin in that? What are you prepared to pay to get a new customer? What's your repeat rate of customers buying, your average basket size? These are all the numbers that we want to be able to see for us to then look at what the digital strategy should be. And we do, you know, our task every day is to look at the online side of it, the online advertising side of it, rather than you know, SEO or email marketing. But without them covering all of the channels, what we do isn't as effective.
Sure. It's I'd actually made a note on my paper to say, like, do you start with budget or do you start with objectives? Because totally get it. Like if you start with budget, firstly, I think, yes, people are probably nervous that you're going to be like, yes, I can spend that. But also it's almost an irrelevant question unless you can, yes, you can massively up the budget if your return on that budget, if your client is worth, 20 grand per head, then yeah, okay, I can spend considerably more.
Yes, but when the client then says, "Oh no, it's an unlimited budget," and it's not, because they have only got so many products they can sell. They have only got so many people in the warehouse that can pack those products. They have only got so much that they can pay to get the raw materials to make those products. So it's never limitless, and most companies, even small companies, will have a budget of what they expect their sales to be or how many leads they need. So we start with that. What does your next 6 months look like from targets? Let's say you're targeted, you sell 200 products a month at the moment. You're targeted to sell 250. Well, how are you getting those 200 sales a month at the moment? So we'd look at what channels we can see the sales coming from, but always with the context that there is no linear path to purchase, that it's there's multiple touch points, especially in direct to consumer. There's multiple touch points. So we look at things like top conversion paths within Google Analytics to understand a more holistic attribution. Wowzers, there were a lot of marketing terms thrown in there. Sorry, it is a marketing podcast though.
It's a marketing podcast. You can say what you want.
I know, every so often just throw in the word attribution and
absolutely
hope that everyone understands what you're saying. But yeah, it's, so you need 50 more products sold. How much are you willing to pay to get each of, what percentage of that product cost are you willing to pay to get that new sale? And then we look at the channels and the types of advertising we can do to help them achieve that. Sometimes it is frustrating. We love being PPC specialists, but sometimes it is frustrating not being general digital marketing agency, where we have got all of the other channels within our agency. We need them to be working on their SEO and their email marketing and their website. But we've chosen to be specialists because PPC is normally the channel that is the least well managed. So by making sure we're great at that, we have to rely on the clients to get support within their other channels.
I mean, otherwise, if you were doing like email marketing as well, you'd be taking on, that's when you end up with creative and copywriting. And it's not just like, oh, it's another channel. It's a whole other skill set in a way, isn't it?
Yeah. And I criticize, rightly or wrongly, I see with most full service digital agencies that they always have a weak department. It is normally that if the founder is a creative, then they're brilliant at creative. If the founder was, a website developer, then they're great at website development. But very rarely can they be great in all departments. Now, that's not true. There are some companies that are great in all departments, but generally the agencies that we come across are certainly their PPC tends to be the most underrepresented department. The poor relative that sits on the side and everyone goes down, goes, oh, your CPCs are too high. But and nowadays, by the way, we're not even meant to talk about the CPC, the cost per click. That's becoming irrelevant. Ultimately, it's all about cost per acquisition. It doesn't matter if you're paying 25 quid for a click if it gets you the sale and your cost per acquisition needs to be 25 quid. So that's, the terminology is changing.
That's good.
Yeah, it's hard to talk to clients about that though, because they want that as one of their key metrics.
Yeah, but you can just tell them it's a vanity metric and to get over themselves.
And education is a big part of what we do. Every time we're reporting, we're educating and we're trying to, empower our clients to be able to understand what all the different metrics mean.
Yeah. Business,
numbers,
good.
Numbers mean. Let's stop it.
What was I going to ask you? I was going to ask you about, you mentioned law firms, for example. Yeah, I can imagine the cost per acquisition. I used to work in finance and trying to sell finance, my client always used to say, let's do some Google. And I was like, we cannot afford it. Like literally cannot afford it. Is there certain sectors where you do sort of say, look, this is not necessarily the way to go because it's too competitive?
Yes, if they've got a really clear understanding of what they're willing to pay for a new customer, then it's not that they can't do any Google advertising. It's that normally search advertising might not be the right way to go. What we tend to do, though, in that scenario, so a legal firm should really go to a legal specialist agency because it is a very competitive and industry, and it is really good to be specialist in that. So we turned down a legal client yesterday. My colleague's coming in. Sorry, Katie.
No, it's fine.
We'll have to pause on that second. I'm just recording a webinar, Becky. So that's okay. Okay, so if we go back to, there are some industries that it becomes too competitive to show, particularly in Google search. So in those situations, what we would do is we'd look at their level of traffic and maybe see if we could do a remarketing strategy where you're remarketing to people in Google search, so that you're not showing to everybody searching for PPI. No, in fact, PPI doesn't even exist now, does it?
Only if they're trying to get a cashback payment.
I know, but I think that's all over now.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Okay, so personal and injury lawyer, for example, if they've got enough website traffic coming to their website, you could bid just on people who are already familiar with you, who are searching those keywords, and that can at least control your audience size and control, making sure that you're showing up for the people who are most likely to convert. But yeah, the cost per clicks are like 50, 60 quid. Maybe even more now. But that's not all Google advertising. That's just Google search advertising. So you'd still have display, discovery, YouTube. YouTube advertising is so under resourced at the moment. Underutilized at the moment.
I feel like I want to do more on YouTube advertising.
It's so good, and not just for brand awareness, for action as well, for conversions. The audience bidding, it's the Facebook of the Google world. The audience targeting is phenomenal. You can tell your story, and you've got to front load it. The first 5 seconds of your video creative. So let's say you do a 30-second video. Yeah, it's got to be unskippable. Completely unskippable. You've got to capture attention at that point, and it works really, really effectively.
I have no actual statistics to fall back on for this statement, but I'm going to go with it anyway. I feel with YouTube, do you remember it used to be just like kids used to hang out on it, almost like Facebook, and then the audience in Facebook evolved massively. It's now just everyone's mum. I feel like YouTube has started pushing up as well. I need to back that up with some statistics.
I've got some statistics.
Hit me.
Let's see.
Am I right?
Yeah. I've got a slide. Let's see if my computer can actually, because I know that the camera is having all kinds of problems today, flicking on and off. So here we go. Let me see if I can tell you what the stat is on YouTube. Oh, it might be too much. Here we go. We go. You're going to have to cut this bit out. It's worth it for the stats.
I could just put some music, like hold music in for this bit.
Right, so you ready for some stats?
Yes, hit me with the YouTube stats.
Okay, so the YouTube stats this year is that 20 million people in the UK are watching YouTube on their TV screens each month. There were 44 million UK views of exercising at home between March and April alone.
None of them were me.
And 1 in 3 now watch online video more than traditional TV. And then I say in the talk afterwards, so now is the time to adopt it. Because it's not a cheesy talk.
It sounds great. So is there any statistics around kind of like usage of age, or are we just assuming that because it's like
there's no question it's increasingly an older audience. I mean, on average, I think the UK adult watches 46 minutes of YouTube per day, and that is across all of the age groups averaged. Because you can do things like how to bake, how to make sourdough, how to make banana bread. There's a great stat that shows that yes, lots of people were like wanting to do online yoga and daily exercise, but actually banana bread outstrips those searches by far in lockdown. But the older, as in, I'm saying older, 45. I'm not far away from 45. I should be careful. But 45 years plus are increasingly online. Over 80% of them are researching stuff online before they make a purchase. I mean, I think some of the behaviors that we've seen this year, this having to go online to do your shopping, having to go online to search things to solve, like how to do your hair dye and searches like that.
I did not search that.
Neither did I, but did you not watch Holly Willoughby's video of her dyeing her hair?
I mean, it was bollocks though, that video.
It was mesmerizing. I mean, I've never ever watched someone dye their hair before, and I suddenly wasted 10 minutes of my life watching it.
I think there's a lot of post-production on that video.
I'm sure there is, but let's not be cynical. Okay?
I can't help it.
But I think that there was a question mark in the summer when we started to go back to kind of slightly more normal life. And please, let's not use the term new normal. But as we started to go slightly back to normal life, whether those kind of online trends in buying behaviour were going to continue, particularly with the over 45s. And there's no question that this second lockdown 2.0, as they're calling it, has entrenched some of those behaviours into habits.
Yeah, certainly things like online purchases as well. Even if I consider like my own family, probably weren't super confident buying online. Now it's just like, well, of course we're going to have to buy this online because I don't want to go anywhere. So.
And the more times you do that, the more comfortable you get with that. So the 45 overs that were not necessarily digital natives, I think is the expression, are now feeling much more comfortable with that, including my mum, who it took me about 3 hours to set up her iPad remotely.
Oh no.
Yes, it was the worst 3 hours of my life. But yeah, they have totally adopted it, and that I think that is going to be a behaviour we'll see increase in 2021.
For sure. It's good with what you guys are doing as well, isn't it? Because it's like you say, there's been diversification around new channels and the direct to consumer stuff, which again is another topic in itself. I feel like there's a massive conversation with businesses that traditionally are selling into things like the multiples. They don't really want to sell direct to consumer because it costs them so much more money to sell direct to consumer than it does for them to just send a bunch of pallets off to the supermarket.
I do think businesses have learned, especially an example like that, maybe a food production company that sold mainly through chains, then had to suddenly pivot to direct to consumer. I think it's taught them that they now need to spread their distribution channels.
Sure.
They need to be investing in all of the channels because you don't know at what point one of them could be cut off. I think that it also helps with brand awareness, which will therefore increase the demand for the multiples buying their products. Brand marketing is something that we struggle to to get small SMEs to see the value in, because they're all after performance, that they're all after performance, and they're all after that kind of bottom of the funnel. The person's already in market to buy X, and you show them that they've clicked on an ad, they've bought it, and they just want tons more people like that. But if you're not doing that brand awareness, that exposure, and getting people into the top of the funnel, and really, emphasizing what your brand values are. Sustainability is something that's really important increasingly to customers. That's being driven by consumers. 65, I think it is, % of people surveyed by Google in this summer, in this particular study they did, said that sustainability was one of their decision-making factors when buying a product. And you're going to love this stat. This was one that I think that SMEs who have been able to pivot and sell direct to consumer in lockdown. So, perhaps a Cornish fishmonger, or an asparagus producer, or a gin brand. One of the things that they've got to be mindful of is they saw this massive spike in sales in lockdown if they managed to pivot quickly enough. But Google did a questionnaire, and it came out that only 80% of people who bought from a new brand in that March, April time, 80% of people weren't sure that they'd ever buy from that brand again. So making sure that all of your marketing strategy is covering those new customers. Are you speaking to those new customers in the right way that's appropriate for them?
Yeah.
Because they might not be your traditional customer. They might not want to get your daily newsletters, or and making sure that you adapt your marketing strategy to be able to speak to those new customers.
And also, and stuff like, like you say, it's that brand element. If you're asking somebody to pay $4.99 in postage and packaging, and they're getting it from your website, and it's £3 more than it is in the supermarket anyway, you might want to put something in it that makes it feel more special for that extra money, whether or not that's, something tiny. It's just like that sense of, like you say,
Yes.
it's that presentation of the brand and the values, isn't it? As opposed to just, we've flogged it to you.
There's a big push for localism now, for shop local. And you've seen, the Google ads on TV with Anthony Joshua, encouraging people to leave online reviews for their local businesses, not just local shops, local businesses. There's no question there's a consumer appetite for wanting to support their local high street, the local businesses they can buy from. But ultimately, if it's more expensive and they could get next day delivery with Amazon, they also are careful with money. So convenience is a number one driver of purchase. That is considered the most important thing when making a purchase. So, yes, they might still eventually buy from you if Amazon's one of your channels, but if they can get next day delivery with Amazon, they're going to, if it's a pain in the ass to buy it from you direct.
Yeah. Oh, it's so, there's so much, these guys have a lot to think about, don't they? You do have to think about these things.
I'm doing a talk later for travel businesses, for everything from B&Bs to holiday parks to hotels, and there's this feeling that Booking.com is the enemy. And that's the one thing that when people come, and Booking.com is the enemy because it's eroding margins, because it takes a booking fee, and I don't actually agree with that. I think that if you're a small travel company that doesn't have a big marketing budget, Booking.com is a wonderful way of reaching your audience. And yes, you might pay, I don't know what the percentage is now, 15%, 20%, whatever it is, but you'll pay that in marketing costs to get that customer anyway.
Yeah.
And it enables small businesses, to small travel businesses, to be able to reach their audience effectively without having to have massive resource. So this kind of Booking.com being the enemy, Amazon being the enemy, I don't believe in that. I think that build your business, to make sure that you understand who your customer is and that you appropriately market to them to drive your sales.
It's about harnessing it, isn't it? It's not about fighting it. It's about how do I make the most of the fact that they have a massive platform that I could be using.
Yeah, with great web interface, you've got the trust indicators of the reviews. You've got the scarcity bias of there is only 2 rooms remaining. There are 20 people looking at this right now. It works well because that's what consumers need to make a decision.
Yeah, a push.
Rather than a hotel's website that takes 15 seconds to load on a mobile.
Yeah, but they've got a great video though, Jay.
They should be doing some YouTube advertising then.
Yeah. We can just wait for the video. So I don't know if you heard it, but I did a webinar with Lucy, who is head of insight for the Financial Times.
I've not heard Lucy's one.
So actually, I've got it. It's going up on YouTube, hopefully this month, actually. And she said that they'd slowed their website down by like 1, 2, and 3 seconds. And they actually worked out that even that delay, it was millions of pounds. They worked out that it was costing them.
Wow, that's an expensive experiment.
It was an expensive experiment, but also what it just demonstrated was that, if you were to say to your managing director, like, oh, the website's 2 seconds too slow, and they'd be like, so the fact that they've been able to demonstrate that it's actually costing them millions. And so she said, as a result of that, they massively focused on speed. But more businesses should think about the fact that if that is what is an indicator for consumers of, do I want to be on this website? Why wouldn't you focus on it?
Absolutely. It's something I bang on about all of the time is page speed, and using, there's a whole wealth of tools out there, and then we could start to get into time to first bite, but that would really perhaps segment the audience into geeks and non-geeks.
I'm not a geek, so I would struggle, but I'd listen. A couple more questions for you, and then I will let you get on with your day. What time do you have to go, Jay?
Whenever it suits.
Okay. So I was going to ask you about the line between when you recommend people get to the point of outsourcing. I know you're biased as an outsource agency. However, you also have been known to train. Is it to do with capacity? Is it to do with objective? Or is it to do with opportunity? Or none of the above?
There's always an exception to the rule, but for majority of people, when we go in and we train an in-house member of the team who's looking after PPC, even if they're dedicated to looking after PPC, it is rare that when we come up with their action plan of all the things that they could be experimenting with, trying, rolling out in the account, here are the best practices. It's rare, number one, that they've identified or seen any of those things, or two, that they ever get done. Because even if the person's job is pure PPC, the amount of internal meetings, over-reporting, wasted time that isn't spent in the interface, and also a lack of understanding from the person who line manages them, what their job actually is. So we always are able to see ways that the account can be working harder. Why not then outsource it to a company whose job is to make it work harder, to report on that? Because then they are, you're giving that responsibility to the agency. It's great. They're accountable for it. When it's an internal member of the team, if they're accountable for it, you're also having to look at, what their professional development is, their personal development. You're having to do reviews. It's not always the most effective way of doing it, but there are exceptions to that rule. And probably when you're getting in the realms of £100,000-200,000 a month on ad spend, you probably would be looking at least having somebody in the team who has an in-depth knowledge of PPC.
Cool. I mean, my view is always to chuck it out, but um, and then how important, and I know we kind of already touched on this, and when it comes to Google search, you know, we know it's all copy, but how important is content?
Content is, well, gosh, I'm not going to say content is king. That has got to be one of the most overused phrases in the world. Queen. Yes. Content is really important. Creativity is important. The machine is taking over a lot of manual tasks, but one thing that the machine cannot do better than humans is creativity. And it's probably underutilized, under-resourced. It's something that even with the government adverts, did you see that, where the ballerina said that she should be retraining as a digital marketing person?
I don't know if you saw the ones after, when, you know, when Dominic
joke ones.
Yeah, when Dominic Cummings left as well, it was like I mean, the problem is like with some of that stuff, it's like it's funny, but it's also just tragic, really tragic, because that's creativity is what the machine can't replace. And so if you want to get ahead of the competition, if you want to beat the brands that you're competing with, then being creative, whether it's a great Facebook ad or YouTube video, you know, yes, the machine behind it that's doing the bidding, that's showing the ads is important. And the more data we give that machine, the more effective it is. So that's our part of our job, is kind of data hygiene, making sure that it has that data to be able to optimize. But if the creative isn't good enough to begin with, then it's set to fail anyway. And perhaps digital marketing is something that is a slow adopter of great creatives. You know, people take perhaps more time over what their magazine advert's going to look like versus what their Facebook ad's going to look like. And yet it is super crucial that they get that right. It's you know, one on the list of things to talk about in an entirely single conversation is creative economy, and the fact that, you know, those adverts just demonstrated an entire lack of understanding of that businesses in a lot of ways are powered by the creative economy. You know, how are you supposed to grow your business and sales if you don't have a team that can creatively come up with strategy and then deliver and implement that?
Definitely. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's like, in adversity, those businesses that were able to pivot, to thrive, to change things up, to very quickly, here we go, here's another term, you know, be agile, you know, and be able to respond to what their customers were doing and be there, you know, appropriately for them. It's those businesses that were creative doing that have been able to thrive. Creativity is something, I think, even in schools we don't harness well enough. You know, we're still concentrating importantly on, you know, on maths and, I don't know, with a subjunctive clause in English, but giving time for children to develop ideas and be creative and understand kind of how important that's going to be to, even if they're a data scientist, you still have to be creative.
Yeah, it's, everything's segmented out, isn't it? It's all siloed, and actually the approach can be used irrespective of what you're doing. Like if you're a scientist or a physicist, if you can't think creatively and you're just thinking, I don't know, it's just like you say, I'm not going to start ranting about it right now.
Not before your second coffee.
I am due another coffee.
Yeah, me too.
I wondered if you had any advice if people wanted to get better. So not necessarily at actual PPC itself. So I'm not saying people want to get better at you know, actual management of their Google Analytics or Google AdWords, whatever it may be. if they wanted to get better at thinking about their digital strategy and using their budget in the best way, have you got any kind of like nuggets of genius?
Yes, which is, we're now living in this great world where conferences are all online, and there are podcasts like this fantastic one. There are, you know, so many online resources that you can learn from. I used to be very frustrated. I live in Devon now, but when I lived in Cornwall in particular, that, you know, there were conferences happening in Leeds, in London, and getting there would take so much time out of my my busy schedule. But it is hard if you've got kids at home that you're the sole carer for, which I was at the time. You know, trying to be able to take that time out of both work and home life to go and learn from others at a conference, and was like really hard.
Quid. And like, what SME business is like, more than
500 quid plus, by the way. I mean, you know, some of the conferences, SMX is like 1,200, 1,500 quid. It is expensive. And I, even just from a networking point of view, I always felt as a woman business owner that had kids that meant that I couldn't travel, that, I was on the back foot because I couldn't just drop everything and be at these things. They're now all online, and there's some really good ones. I mean, Digital Gaggle last week that brought together lots of different companies. You know, they were talking about AR, they were talking about creative PR, link building, things that, you know, okay, you're not going to watch it and know exactly how to do it, but it's all about seeing what other people are doing, what other industries are doing. I spoke to one person because they have this, you know, at some of these conferences, they have this quirky online networking that it's almost like speed dating. You go into a networking room and someone appears on your screen and you've got 5 minutes to talk to them and they count down. But it's good because but you meet people that you wouldn't ordinarily meet, because not everybody feels comfortable going up to people at a conference. They tend to stay with their colleagues or by themselves looking at their phones. So you force yourself into this room. And I spoke to someone who worked in the third sector, worked for a charity, and she was coming to Digital Gaggle to learn about what other sectors were doing, what direct to consumer and B2C companies were doing, so that she could see if there was anything that she could apply to her industry. And I thought that was really clever. And she could do that because the tickets were like 29 quid. And that is accessible to a lot more people than the 1,200 quid. I watched Measure Summit that was going on simultaneously. It was being broadcast from Germany and I'm going to say Seattle, but it was definitely somewhere in America. And these two people coming together to host this online conference from different parts of the world. And it was brilliant. I learned loads about Google Tag Manager, about data layers, totally geeked out. And I've also got the videos afterwards that I can go back and watch. So I think get out of your comfort zone, go to online conferences, absorb all of this knowledge that's out there, and definitely do it for other industries, because by not just keeping an eye on your competitors, by keeping an eye on other industries, you might be able to bring some of that creativity into your sector. Rona from Excess Energy always used to say to Tom, you know, go on and subscribe to newsletters in America, Australia, India, to see how different countries are also adopting different technologies, and see if there's anything that the UK could learn from that, because that's, again, you know, it kind of takes you out of your comfort zone. And I think the talk from last week that really reminded me that I must keep going to these things was the one about AR, how it is something that brands need to be looking at, whether you're a pram company that, you know, can use AR to show you how big the pram is in your living room, whether it's going to be able to fit beside your sofa, or fun things like there was one that Lego did, like a Harry Potter window where it turned the window in your room into some kind of Harry. I'm not a massive Harry Potter fan, but something. It was very cool.
It was. Oh, I mean, I think that you're right. Like that's it's something anyway. Like, why would you don't want to just get inspiration if you're trying to do something? You don't want to be getting inspiration from your competitors because they're already doing it. It's what are people doing in other sectors? Like, I've always used fashion as a massive sector for inspiration when it comes to, you know, even B2B marketing, because those guys spend good money building their brand and coming up with new ideas using influencers, you know, whatever it may be. And but so you can gain so much from looking at what other people are doing.
Yeah. Apparently they're called content creators now.
Oh.
Yeah.
What, influencers?
They've had a promotion.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes I saw a thing the other day and it was talking about micro influencers and it was like less than 500. And I was like, that's just a social media user. That's not a micro influencer.
Can't be less than 500.
Yeah.
Got it. That's just your Auntie Pam.
Exactly. You know, that's somebody that just keeps adding people they don't know on LinkedIn. And it's, I don't know, it's the world's gone mad. Well, I'm going to let you get on with your day. Thank you so much for taking the time out to have a chat with us. I feel like I want to make a list of all the other things that I wanted to talk to you about, and then we can have another debate on sales v marketing.
Absolutely.
There's
one thing I will leave you with, though, is that there's a great blog on Think by Google, and it shows the paper, or you have the ability to download the paper called Decoding Decisions. And I would recommend that anyone who's into digital marketing or marketing in general reads it, because it's all about the messy middle and how consumer behavior, how difficult it is for a consumer to make a choice now. And I think it's been very well written and describes accurately what we try and get companies to adopt every day, which is these shortcuts to help consumers make a decision to buy their product. So Decoding Decisions.
Okay, I'll find it and we'll put the link in the podcast bio and the YouTube bio.
Perfect.
Thanks, Jaye.
Oh, no worries, Katie. Always a pleasure.
So I hope you enjoyed that podcast with Jaye Cowle. Such an amazing person to chat to about all things marketing. Her knowledge blows my mind. There's plenty more that came from. Please do like, subscribe and sign up to our newsletter or social media channels to stay in touch with more stuff coming from the Marketing Forum very soon.